Welcome back to Pacific SitRep. It's been a while, but I wanted to get Commander Salamander on to talk about a variety of things. But, sir, let's start with the big kahuna in the room, the naval flotilla down off the coast of Venezuela. And my question to you is it being used appropriately? Is that an appropriate use of naval power in your estimation?
Well, I think the U.S. Navy in the Caribbean goes back to really our Revolutionary War. It is our backyard.
Yes.
We definitely have a greater reason to be there than the People's Republic of China has to be off Scarborough Shoals, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
When it first started, when the first ship started going, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders because back when I was a JO, right after the end of the Cold War, we didn't know what to do with all of our all of our equipment after the defeat of the Soviet Union in the Gulf War, and of course the drug wars really kicked off. Both Bush the elder and also Bill
Mm-hmm.
Clinton were both very enthusiastic about that. So we had a lot of people deployed to the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific to do what's been going on for decades with too little effect.
Mm-hmm.
And as more and more started to be sent south, and you started to make the connection between, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, the Venezuelan drug gang that uh, thousands of their foot soldiers were let into the U.S. During the
Yeah.
Biden administration. You know, the
Trend to
Aurora.
arrival. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Aurora, Colorado was just one small part of that,
Mm-hmm.
and the designation of them as a terrorist organization, combined with not only in 2016 but in 2020 and 2024, President Trump made a good impression with people with his ability to actually discuss and show some empathy for the hundreds of thousands of families that have been impacted by fentanyl poisoning.
Yes.
And then we saw they had a half dozen ships. They had sent one of our large deck amphibs down there with their complement of Marines, quite a few Arleigh Burke class destroyers, even an LCS that was already down there. And it was kind of having flashbacks because Naval Station Roosevelt Roads, which is on the eastern side of Puerto Rico, originally we were operating out of an airfield, and I think we still are on the northwestern corner of Puerto Rico. Roosevelt Roads is the east central portion of Puerto Rico. It appears they're even reactivating that as initial forces are going down there to, I think we're doing a few things. One, Venezuela is the proxy for Russia, China, Cuba, other bad faith actors in Central America. There
Mm-hmm.
are soft friendlies in some um, of the republics down there, but Venezuela, it's part of that club. And combined with a lot of their bad faith acting for most of the last decade plus, things just kind of aligned that the Trump administration looked like they had the opportunity and decided to pull the trigger to make a strong statement towards the Venezuelan government. That's the specifics. But as I mentioned to a couple of other people, if stopping poison from coming to your nation across the open seas and the littorals and the approaches to your country isn't a use of a navy, just like if defending your borders is not a use for an army at its
Mm-hmm.
most fundamental basis, then why do you have either one? So that's the long answer to say, yes, I think it is a good use. And as somebody who is as a junior officer in the 1990s, spent over a year of my life chasing drug runners in the Caribbean and the Eastern
Mm-hmm.
Pacific, watching all those people get away with so much because we did so little on the terminal
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
Um, it was interesting to watch. I'll let the lawyers argue about the specifics of it.
So my sense is that yes, there are drugs coming out of Venezuela, but that's not where most of them come from. I think
Correct.
this is more of a, as you said, a signal. Venezuela's likely been involved in our elections. As you said, they've moved Tren de Aragua into the United States, a very violent gang. and that's human trafficking, that's drug running, that's all kind of sophisticated networks. And so I think it's more of a signal to them, like, stop doing what you're doing, or they'll get worse.
And
Yeah.
and it does send, and again, a lot of international relations and even use of a military,
Mhm.
it's signaling to others. And when you look at, if you just want to look at it from a the drugs coming in here, there's a whole other because it's a supply and demand issue. You have
Yeah,
the
sure.
demand issue in the U.S. Roger that, check in the block, understand. But one thing about supply and demand curves, they have volume and cost. You want to, one way, not the only way, and I would argue not the most effective way, to impact volume on a demand curve is to increase the price. One way
Right,
you increase price is either decrease the supply or increase the cost of the product by making it more expensive to get it
right,
here. One
right,
thing about fentanyl used to be back, when I was a kid, the drug runners coming up the coast with big, you know, hay bale sized things of cheap weed, or maybe some heroin or maybe some cocaine. Fentanyl, it's very efficient to move because of how potent it is. But when you look at all the different threat vectors coming into the U.S. with the narcotics, both politically, legally, and second and third order effects from a diplomatic point of view, what is the easiest target to try to make a signal?
yeah.
Where's the lowest risk? Whichever risk category you want to pick, it's Venezuela. So that's easier than Colombia, Mexico, or some of the other players.
So I think you're right. The lawyers have to do their thing, whether all the legality of all this, which I'm sure it's going to be challenged. But I don't think those boats are bringing drugs into the U.S. They may be trying to get to Curacao or to some other big ship, but those are small. They're like rowboats. I mean, I don't think they're going all the way to the U.S. Do you?
You'd be surprised when you look
Really?
at some of those. They're generally called go fasts, but go fast to me, at
Hmm.
least back when we were doing this as a kid, they were like when you see the cigarette boats down in Miami.
Yeah, Miami
Those are
Vice.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's your classic go fast. This is the Timu go fast. They're cheaper to make. They can
Mm,
carry a lot of volume. They usually have at least two, sometimes up to four outboard motors. And if you look at the pictures, you'll see they're usually blue, but they do come in other colors. But they usually have 55-gallon drums,
mm.
and that's fuel.
Right.
And they will often, especially coming from Venezuela, there's a series of you get it from one safe area to another.
Right.
So that boat's not going to pull into the Chesapeake Bay, but it will either meet a larger ship at sea or they'll
Exactly.
take it to, for instance, I don't know whether they're still doing it, but back in the day, over to the Mosquito Coast to bring it inland to put it on a plane, and the plane will fly it in. So it's just part of that supply chain.
Right.
And it's just probably the easiest thing to do it, especially if you're tracking those things when they leave the Venezuelan port.
Hmm.
Again, you've nobody is going master arm to arm and hitting intent to launch on a button unless they've got a jag behind them going, it's met our ROE criteria. You've
Right.
got, you know, you're good to go. So it's much easier to do when they're just coming off because you know what port they come from. And we have pretty good intelligence in a lot of
Hmm.
places in the world.
Hmm.
Some places are easier than others. So yeah, we probably got eyes on who it is, and it checks all the boxes. It's just a lot easier to do closer to the source than
Right.
than
That makes
further up
sense.
the chain.
So let's move around the world. I spent a lot of time back in the day at Clark Air Base, not at Subic, but I saw your piece on Subic. Are
Yeah,
we going back to the Philippines?
it looks like, but we're going back differently. When both the Philippine government and Mount Pinatubo invited us to leave, it was still running off the steam of World War II, Vietnam, quasi colonial vibe, so to speak. A
Hmm.
literal generation has passed since then. Our relationship with the Philippines, to use a neutral term, it's more of a partnership of equals to a certain extent. It's a
Hmm.
more mature operation, and it's not that we're coming in here and building Little Virginia and Subic Bay like we had before, and then we had the natives in Olongapo on the other side of the fence. We have the South Koreans are coming in. I don't know if the Japanese are in Subic, but the Japanese have been doing a lot as well. The
Hmm.
Philippines themselves are going to be having a lot more independence and a lot more of their own companies and their own construction. They're much more capable than perhaps they were in the past because they've been more
Hmm.
independent over the course of the last few decades. But it it is from the time Admiral Dewey went in there during the Spanish American War. I mean, it's a tremendous harbor,
Oh,
tremendous
yeah.
location. And you talk to anybody that spent time around the Navy, at least, uh, we even used to have back in the day recruitment offices and a certain quota of Filipinos that we would recruit. And we still have a lot of Filipino Americans who are multi-generational who serve in the Navy.
Yes.
They're 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 great. They're great officers. They're great sailors. Great enlisted people. They're just it's tremendous. So it's after having a touchy relationship the last few decades for a whole host of reasons. It's nice to see, at least, for me, and I think for most people who have worked with Filipinos, whether they're
Mhm.
first generation or fifth generation, but they all have family. It's nice to see us getting back together because you can be real politic and just look at the chart and see how important the Philippines are. But there's also, I think, a lot of mutual affection because of
Yes.
that's it's what should be happening. But I think both the U.S. and the Filipinos needed to let our let things settle and cure and go in a more positive direction, which I think is where we are.
Well, I think the relationship was always good, except for the commies down in Luzon. But I
Yeah.
remember that well. But it was always a good relationship. So yeah, I hope that moves forward. I want to ask you about the Black Sea. We have a new. I don't know if it's a naval base so much as it is an air base in Romania, and that is obviously a NATO installation. And that had a lot to do with why they wanted a certain party in the elections recently, I think. But it's to try to get our footprint in the Black Sea. What's your thoughts on all of that?
When you look at the Black Sea, I'm doing my little Google Earth thing because I love
Hmm.
charts.
Hmm.
Um, if you look at the coastline going counterclockwise, starting at about 10 o'clock or so, you've got Romania,
Hmm.
Bulgaria, and Turkey.
Hmm.
Just that coastline is about 60% plus of the shoreline of the Black Sea. So the Black Sea is in the NATO sphere influence and concern. Now, Romania, if for those that aren't familiar, it's on the very western shore of of the Black Sea. Ukraine's in the north. Russia is in the east northeast. Then you have Georgia there on the coast as well, and of course, Turkey there on the southern end. Um, we've had bases in Romania for a while. A lot of it for ballistic missile defense. Especially our European allies have been partnering with the Romanian shipyards for over a couple decades, I think a couple decades now, where a lot of, I think the Dutch and even the Brits, maybe the Spanish, maybe not, um,
Hmm.
have partnered with them. Where just from a cost point of view, the Romanian shipyards will build the hull and then they'll take the hull back to the home country to put all the advanced systems on it. So not so much us, and we're kind of limited on what we can do in the Black Sea because of a long-standing treaty
Hmm.
of how long warships can go of non-Black Sea nations can go in and out of the Black Sea. But I think we are going to expand our presence there, both the air and a sea presence. We're not going to have any really, I don't think, we shouldn't, significant land forces there, but it's natural as long as the Russia-Ukrainian war continues to be an issue and we want to help Our allies keep an eye on things because when it comes to ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and response,
Mm-hmm.
nobody has the capabilities and the capacity that we do. We have some of our partner nations, the Brits, the Swedes, and a few of our other nations do have good ISR platforms, but they can't maintain the presence for very long because they just don't have that many. And so, yeah, I think that partnership and those that have worked with the Romanians are great. They're not a rich nation by any stretch of the imagination, but they are also cautious. They have a history with the Russians, the Soviets, the
Mm-hmm.
new Russian Federation. They know who is across um, the Black Sea. So if
Mm-hmm.
they look to their left and their right and their back, they want to have friends there with them, just in case things get sportier than they already have been.
Yeah, that's one to watch, in my opinion, because you have the new Trump route for international peace and prosperity trip across Armenia from Azerbaijan to Turkey, which cuts out Iran and China actually from that Silk Road there. So it's fascinating, and I think Romania is going to play a big part in protecting that. Just my gut. Let's move to China and Taiwan. We've talked extensively about this, but what's your gut feeling lately? Any updates on what you see there?
It's steady state. I think there's nothing that I've seen that would have my concerns be any greater than they already are. I stand by um, my contention that if I had to put $20 on what's going on here, is the Chairman Xi has told his military, I want you to be prepared
Mm-hmm.
by 2027 to be able to take Taiwan if we want to. And from
Mm-hmm.
what I've been able to see in open source, and I give a great nod of respect to the Chinese military, they're doing just that. They're
Mm-hmm.
building capacity as fast as they can. They are getting their air crew and their sailors experience and getting to know the waters around Taiwan, like our military knows the waters around Hawaii and San Diego and Virginia. And they have arranged their civilian infrastructure to literally at the flick of a switch turn into military infrastructure. Does that mean they will try to militarily take Taiwan? Uh, that's for Chairman Xi to decide
Mm-hmm.
whether he wants to do that. Uh, is his military preparing to do it? Absolutely, they would because that's what they've been told to do. And
Mm-hmm.
the Chinese military, it's very similar to the U.S. military in some ways, but also very very different. But the fundamentals are the same. The boss tells you to be prepared to do X, you do X, or you get fired. Which Chairman Xi, I will also give a nod of respect to him. And it's not just for political reasons. If he gets whiff that there is a general or an admiral who is corrupt or is inefficient or is not doing what they're supposed to do, he will fire them quickly, publicly, and
Mm-hmm.
find somebody who will align.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a little better at that than we are.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk about the U.S. Navy. There's been several people relieved of command and pulled out of positions. Where do you see the future, or how do we sit as far as getting rid of some of the DEI and officers who maybe are not so keen on doing what the commander in chief asks?
And I think there's two things to look at. There's one, the true believers, and
Mm-hmm.
there are two those that are given a legal order.
Mm-hmm.
And because they are military professionals, they will say aye, aye, and they'll execute that legal order to the best of their ability. I
Mm-hmm.
think what we've seen is some, but not all. A lot of the true believers are those that were senior leaders during some of the most egregious offenses during peak wokeness.
Yeah.
And if you hold it was worst between 2018 and 2022. I first saw it when I was a midshipman in the 1980s.
Then they're sitting eating their dog food, and the family sits down and gets lasagna, and they're like, "What is that?" And they have this sense, like, actually, maybe what I'm eating is shit. Maybe they're getting the good stuff, but you don't really know. And that's why you don't feed dogs to the table, because the second you do, they're done. They're like, really? Beef eyes? I don't think so. I'm not eating that shit anymore, because they know better. And that's what Zin is. Like, the second you have it, you're like, what? Are you serious? I put that shit in my mouth? And you're mad, obviously, at the people who did it to you, but also at yourself for, like, settling for that, for settling.
Because we're not actually dogs.
No, we're not dogs. And, like, why would I be eating beef anus when I can eat?
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
But it was a small little baby there compared to what it metastasized in. The metastasis really started in earnest about 2012, and it reached a peak 22, 23. What started to break the fever, I think, not just in the military, but in the culture in general, and the military kind of goes with that, was when Elon Musk took Twitter.
Yes.
And that changed the conversation and allowed the conversation, and that built a critical mass. It also, I think, helped pull the mask down on a lot of the things that have been happening in our government, in our institutions of higher education, in our military. And with the Biden administration and President Biden, I think everybody acknowledges he was a part-time president. He let unelected ideologues in his various areas run his government, and he would step in occasionally and give it a nudge here and there. But he really, especially his last 2 years, but one could argue all 4 years, he wasn't there. And so a lot of the worst players got hold of the military and was taking what was already a touchy situation and was making it even worse. And we've seen some of those people just leave on their own. We saw that at the Naval War College and the Naval Academy. Some of the truest of the true believers just popped a circuit breaker and left themselves. A lot of the other players, though, that did some rather egregious things are still employed and still there. They're just not doing it anymore. I had one of the academics at one of our centers of excellence in higher education tell me that from their perspective, the worst players that are still here have burrowed in like cicadas, and they're going to wait until the years down the road when the environment changes, and they're going to come out again. And, that will happen. It might happen in 3 years. It might happen in 13 years. We don't know. That's why a lot of these changes, they've been done by executive order, and
They need
Secretary
to be
of War, Hegseth, Congress needs to act.
Yes.
And if it doesn't happen by this January, then we're going into election year, and with a 1-seat majority, it's all going to be ephemeral, because the old cliche, the center cannot hold. The center is thin, and it's thinning.
Yeah.
And the events of the last few weeks have just demonstrated that. So this is not dead. It's temporarily reprieved until Congress codifies it in the law.
So well said. Last time we spoke, or the time before, I don't remember, but you were very concerned about the naval ships and their readiness and their maintenance. Has that improved at all? Any more focus on that?
That's something that can take a long time to fix. I do know, and I do have confidence in, from what I've seen, the Secretary of the Navy, Phelan, and his staff, and if you notice what his travel schedule is like, The most precious thing for any senior leader is their time, because it's a finite resource. They can only go so much and do so much. So if you look at the travel schedule in his first 6 to 8 months of the Secretary of the Navy, what has he been doing? Where has he been going? He's been going to shipyards. He's been talking to industry. So there's focus there. There's attention there. And when you look at his background, his skill set is to look at organizations, see what's working, see what's not working, and start to affect change. A lot of that has to do with people, but a big balance of it has to do with money and how you allocate it. You can make some small adjustments in the interim, but will this make a big difference? We will really know here in about 12 to 18 months. We'll get the first hint of it. But you can kind of see a little bit, going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation about, is this the appropriate use of naval resources? And I gave my big pixel answer. There's a caveat in there, a little asterisk that goes down to a footnote at the bottom that follows on to 3 or 4 layers of things. This is a big concern that I had and have for the last few years with what has been going on in the Red Sea and also what we see in the Caribbean Sea is we have a maintenance issue. We have deferred maintenance. We have, and I don't see it, but I've talked to people who have, though they don't give me details because they can't. CAS reps, casualty reports. You have this ship going through the sea that you see has a gun, has VLSLs, has a great radar. You think can hunt submarines, has a bunch of anti-submarine warfare gear. What you don't know is X number of the satellite communications equipment does not work. It has X 0.2% of its weapons are not capable. Only half of its VLSLs can go. It's only packing practice rounds for its 5-inch gun, and it's only manned at 78%. So is that a fully mission capable warship? No. We really have ridden our DDGs and our other ships really hard to meet the demands of the Red Sea, and they've done exceptional work there. And when they get back, ideally you want to have enough time to them to do training, to do refit, to be repaired. And then when you have these sudden deployments down to the Red Sea, what condition are those ships in? What's the opportunity cost for sending them down there? And people go, well, we will, and we saw this a lot, especially during the Obama administration. I remember 2011, 2012, seeing one of, I forget which 4-star it was. He's like, 8 to 9 month deployments are going to be the new normal. It's like, excuse me, that's burning things up. We saw a lot of 11-month deployments. And people go, well, we'll do it this time, but we'll have them, we'll give them, I'll just use a round number here, but they're going to be home for 15 months afterwards. And we have all this maintenance scheduled. And all of a sudden you're 9 months into that 15 months at home, and we're going to the Caribbean in 6 weeks. So you got to stop what you're doing, make the best that you can, and you get down there. And that's been my concern for a long time and I've been writing about it for a long time. People can, search my moniker, searching for Admiral No. I wrote something like this 10, 15 years ago, is we don't have one of the horrible things, of the many horrible things of Goldwater Nichols that we still live under, is the fact that we really don't have an independent department of the Navy anymore, where our admirals can say, no, I know you want 5 ships because the combatant commander has managed to sell his bill of goods saying you want 5 ships. I'm not giving you 5 ships. I'm giving you 3 ships because these other 2 ships are partially mission capable and you can't have them because they need another 4 months to be able to, I need these for future.
The impact on the families. I mean,
yeah. And we haven't even touched on that. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And that impacts retention. That is also, and I go back and try to explain to people the mentality who don't know the Navy background. I'll go back to I'll drag LCS out of the GIMP box and beat it a little bit here. There's a thing that when LCS was off and running, it was called the manning ConOps, concept of operations. They said an LCS can deploy for 4 months because we're going to minimally man it such that the human beings on the ship will not physically be able to do their job after 4 months because we worked them so hard. That's no way to run a railroad. Sure, the
No.
hell isn't a way to run the Navy. That's what happens when you have accountants have 51% of the vote.
Yeah, sure.
And it's almost in wartime, you do what you have to do, but to plan an entire class of ships, an institution, to have institutional sociopathy and a culture of abuse of your sailors. By the way, come join the Navy. We're going to work you to death to the point that after 4 months, we don't trust your ability not to run into a rock. That should have an entire organization go, woohoo, hold on. How did we get here?
Yeah.
Why did we get here? That mindset has not completely gone away. And plus it's just part of being in the military. It's, I'm tough. I can make the sacrifice. I can do it. The sailors will do that. The tactical level leaders will do it. That's their job. They'll do it all day. It's the senior officers who the responsibility is to have the stewardship of the equipment, the personnel, and the mission to be able to go, hold on a minute. This is not an existential threat to our nation. I'm not doing that.
Completely agree.
We don't have people doing that.
Yeah, I'm a special ops guy, so it's those kind of operators too. It's everybody's driven into the ground. Last question. Drone warfare is a thing now. Hypersonic missiles. It's been a concern a long time with our big carriers, and other ships are exposed to this. Can we protect the fleet in this environment?
Yes and no. As long as we are honest with our capabilities, that we don't get too close. The closer you get, if you look at, there are a couple of lines in the Pacific. One, I used to use this term talking about any future conflict in the Western Pacific. I would say west of Wake, and then I realized too many people don't know what Wake Island is, and even if they do, a lot of them don't put it on the map. And then former Congressman Mike Gallagher, he used the term west of the international date line. I realized, that might not be as obscure as a reference. So, Wake Island for me, but generally west of the international date line, which is flight down the middle of the Pacific. That's the first place. So if our fleet has to go west, we leave Hawaii, we leave San Diego. Those are pretty safe waters. The Chinese really haven't shown the ability, like the Soviets used to be able to actually harass us in our backyard. So we're okay there. We go to Wake Island, go to the international date line. That's still kind of the American lake. Then we get to Guam. When you get to Guam, you're no longer in the American lake because the Chinese can reach out with their DF-16, I think it is, or 26. I think one of those two. Anyway, they can reach Guam. So things start getting furry from Guam west, but there's still a lot of territory going from Guam to the Philippines. So you go from yellow and Guam danger, you get to the Philippines, you're deep orange. When you get into the West Philippine Sea, between the Philippines and Taiwan, the Philippines and Vietnam, the Philippines and mainland Asia, that's deep dark red. So if you want to fight in the deep orange to the red, first thing you got to do is you got to mitigate the threat. And the only weapons we really have to mitigate the threat are our deep strike weapons, where we would have to really attrite the threat on the eastern coast of China before we could really bring our carriers to bear. One thing that I'll probably write about next week, I just have it outlined on a piece of paper. I've always been, I keep waiting for the announcement for the replacement for the F-18, the FAXX. The Air Force kind of stole the march on the Navy with I'm still laughing that they called it F-47 after the 47th president. Damn Air Force.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope what comes out of that is what folks like myself, Jerry Hendricks, and a few others have been beating a drum for better part of 2 decades that the problem with our carriers isn't our aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers have been incredibly fragile. Up to the first quarter of 1943 in World War II, we only had one operational carrier in the Pacific because all the other ones had been sunk or damaged to the point they had to go into the yard. Because everybody wants to kill them. Everybody wants to kill them because they are so valuable. What we did in the post-Cold War era is we allowed, it used to be on a carrier air wing, you had the three mafias that were always competing with each other. You had the fighter mafia, which were the F-14s, big 2-seater heavy
I'm
fighter.
familiar with that. I'm a helicopter guy. So
Well, you hate all three of these mafias. You know what I'm talking about. You had the attack mafia, the VA guys, the A6 fellas. Also incredible range, incredible bomb load, incredible egos. Hated the fighter guys. And then you had the little bratty brother that everybody teased, the light attack guys, or you can make the own acronym you want to, the fighter attack guys. They would brief that down a little bit. Anyway, post-Cold War area, the little brother was very feisty. He helped them kill themselves, the VA community, with the A-12 debacle, and they never built anything to replace the A-6, killed them. Then they managed to convince Navy that they didn't need a heavy fighter, and they killed the VF community. So they were the last ones standing. And with that range, and we also didn't develop any long-range strike weapons to be able to attack surface targets or to attack near shore, because we were nobody wanted to look into the future, even though back net assessment, they outlined pretty close. I wish they would just unclassify these things from the 1990s. They were pretty darn close on what the PRC would be in 2025. So people have known this, but it's when you have leadership that only responds in palm cycles and NDAA, they don't make these decisions. So we have this air wing with an incredibly short range air wing to strike somebody. And one thing that's kicking me, because I keep going, I want my requirement for this, it needs to be a heavy fighter, 2-seat. Right now we have the FA-18 Foxtrot, which is a 2-seater, which you have all sorts of more capabilities of 2 seats as opposed to 1. And it's a late thing, but I'd love to have the capability. One thing Russia, I love looking at, not so much small wars, because usually don't last too long and they're not very sophisticated, but medium-sized wars. They give you hints, just like the Spanish Civil War gave you all the hints you needed to know what was going to be important in World War II a few years later. So we've had 2 medium-sized, sophisticated combatant wars recently. We had the ongoing Russia-Ukrainian war, and we've also had the Israeli strikes on Iran. And there's an overlap here of a weapon we don't have that would solve a lot of our problems against the weaponeering problem. Like all we have are TLAMs. We have other toys too, but not really, just because we don't have enough of them. A lot of people talk about the Kinzhal missile that the Russians use, which is basically a short-range ballistic missile slung underneath of a heavy fighter. They're MiG-31s, and I think one of their other ones, I'm not sure. Goes up to high altitude, launches that puppy. It's a ballistic missile, conventionally armed, or it can be nuclear armed, but don't worry about the nuclear issue. Just a conventional issue. So that gives you a ballistic missile, which is hypersonic by itself. It's not a glide weapon. That's hard technology. We really can't produce them in volume right now. But ballistic missiles are a lot more simple. Very, very hard to defend against those. Israel originally, I don't know whether it's chicken or egg situation here, but to help develop their Iron Dome system, their anti-ballistic missile capabilities with the Arrow and stuff, they had to find a way to have a target for them to engage. So they developed an air-launched ballistic missile as well that they also have reconfigured to use to strike land. For instance, the strike that took place in Doha against in Qatar against the Hamas leadership, those were air-launched ballistic missiles. That's a capability I would love for us to develop in half.
Hmm.
That would solve a lot of our problems about range, because even a near peer competitor, if not a peer competitor like the Chinese, it's not too hard to counter target a lot of the cruise missiles and other weapons we have to strike.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they have the ability to counter what the Russians and the Israelis have used recently. That if you, I hate the phrase, but if you're looking for a game changer, or more likely a new weapon system that will open up all sorts of opportunities, that would be it. I would love for us to have that capability.
Interesting. Yeah, the Russians have got some interesting toys. Definitely. Their Reznik and other stuff is extremely interesting. Commander, I've taken 40 minutes of your time. I appreciate it. And anything else you want the world to know right now?
Pray for peace.
Yeah.
The
No
world,
kidding.
there is little piles of kindling all over the place that
Mhm.
are smoldering, are already flickering, or
Mm.
have some over caffeinated kid with a lighter in his hand wanting to set fire to it. I hope is in the end of 25 and early 26, we don't have more of these things light off, because we have, at least in a political environment, especially in Europe, we've got a very interesting 18 months ahead of us. And the fewer things to distract people from the problems we already have would be helpful.
I agree. Thank you for your time. We'll have you back down the road, sir. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate it, Todd. Great talking to
All
you.
right. Take care.